We're going to take you down the road to asset management. So asset management falls under the umbrella of excellence in government at the City of Burlington, and we were directed by our council to create an asset management plan that would align with our strategic goals. Reason being is that the city owns about $2.5 billion worth of tangible capital assets, so stuff basically. Of that $2.5 billion, 90% are in buildings and facilities and roadways. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus more on the roadways category and the work that my group did on that. So for the asset management plan, we wanted to answer 6 questions. What do we own and where is it? What condition is it in and how much is it worth? We also want to understand what rehabilitation we need to do to the assets, when we need to do that rehabilitation, and how much it's going to cost us. So when I talk about the roadways category, I'm basically talking about everything that's within the right-of-way of the road. So we have pavement, curbs, storm sewers. We're a lower tier municipality, so I don't have to worry about sanitary and water distribution. All of our bridges and large culverts, sidewalks, traffic signals, noise walls, retaining walls, basically, like I said, everything within the right-of-way. So we had some good existing information already. We've been doing pavement management in the city since about 1995. In 2005, we implemented Road Matrix, which is our current system. We have detailed inspections done every 5 years using this ARAN vehicle. Oh, sorry. The ARAN vehicle here, where we measure 16 different types of surface distresses and also ride quality. Those two parameters are rolled up to create a PQI, or Pavement Quality Index, which is a representation of the condition of the pavement for the entire section of that piece of pavement. So every year we go out with some people from design and construction and our maintenance department to review those deteriorations to ensure that the system is modeling what's happening out in the field properly. We've been using some new technology to help us document those tours. We've been using the GoPro videos to help us see what's going on with the road and keep records of all those. We also have an Excel loading sheet that allows us to one-click and update our systems with our field reviews. For our storm sewer systems, we get preventative CCTV inspections done. We have over 780 kilometers of storm sewer lines and 28,000 storm sewer structures, so maintenance holes, catch basins, the like. All of our information is kept in the city's GIS system, and those CCTV inspections produce a pipe score, which is a representation of the condition of the pipe. All of that is in the GIS, and we can map that thematically. You can see here we have green pipes represent a good condition score, red is a poor condition score. Our bridge systems, we get our bridges inspected visually every 2 years as per the OACETT standards. That data is now put into our Reva system, so we can manage all of those inspections and produce what's called a BCI, or Bridge Condition Index. Again, it's an overall condition index for the structure. We have a Excel loading sheet that we created as well, so our contractor can go out, populate that sheet, and we can, again, one-click and update all of our systems. For the other assets that are within that right-of-way there, we manage them in the GIS, so it gives us that location data. Our condition assessments for those assets are done by our Roads and Parks Maintenance Department. They've been utilizing some tablet technology to help quantify the defects in terms of severity and extent. So how bad is it and how much of it is there? So those existing systems allowed us to answer those first 3 questions. What do we have, what condition is it in, and what is it worth? But we needed something else to answer the other questions. What do we need to do, when do we need to do it, and how much will it cost? Our existing systems didn't do any long-term predictions. The longest term they could do is about 10 years. We wanted something a little bit longer than that. We needed some new software to help us map out these life cycles of these complex assets. We wanted to also be able to model different types of assets, not just roadways, but parks and open space, computers, basically everything. We wanted a complete corporate solution. And we wanted a 60-year horizon that basically captures some of the longer life assets such as roads and bridges. You get a good idea of what's happening in the life. Once we have that information, we can start looking at how we're going to get the funding in place, and that was addressed as a financial exercise. We'll talk a little bit more later. So we selected Reva Decision Support as the tool to use to map out all of these life cycles. It acts as a planning level tool for us. It's highly configurable, and with our current configuration that we developed, we can predict this optimal asset rehabilitation and replacement timing, which allows us to do the right thing at the right time to the right asset. These are the three pillars of asset management. The system also computes the costs associated with those rehabilitation treatments, and once we have that data, we can compare the funding provided through our capital budget allocation versus the needs, what we should be doing coming out of the Reva system, so that we can quantify our infrastructure gap. Once we have that data, we can do what-if budget scenarios to see how we can start chipping away at that backlog. So the methodology, there were some things we needed to do here. We needed to design these custom life cycles for mainly the roads, but again, bridges and storm sewers are the big three. We needed to code all of that information into the Reva system and make the Reva system do what we wanted it to do. We also had to establish costs for all of those different treatments. And we wanted to do that utilizing our existing condition data. We wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. We really wanted to create a made in Burlington solution. We wanted to model what was happening in our community in terms of the deterioration and the rehabilitation work that we've been doing for a while. It's been a unique approach. It was done completely internally by staff. We wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. Again, to establish this in-house expertise. We wanted other departments to be able to leverage what we know in asset management so that they could get their plans moving forward. We also knew that the outputs from this system were going to be used to make some significant financial decisions for the community. So we wanted to be sure when we were in front of council that we had the very best information possible for them to make their decisions. So I'm going to go through some examples here of what we did. For the roads category, specifically the pavement, we created 13 different types of life cycles that describe the three major types of roads we have: arterials, collectors, and locals. And so we're going to walk through the life of one of these roads right now. So this is a life cycle graph for local residential with curbs. And you can see here, this black line represents the normal deterioration of the road. These boxes represent windows of opportunity for a specific type of treatment. So what we have on the vertical axis is the PQI. That's a measure of the condition of the road. 100 is being a brand new road or very good condition. 20 is very poor and even considered failing at that point. Across the horizontal axis, we have the age of the granular base. That's that underlying supporting layer for the pavement. We found that that was the factor that determined what types of treatments we were going to do. As that age of base gets older, you start moving into the different treatments, and we'll go through some of those. So first thing, we have a road that's 100 on the PQI. This is a new road. This is some of our GoPro video that we have. You can see really nice asphalt mix there, nice new curb and sidewalk. This would represent a fully reconstructed, brand new road with a PQI of 100. Now the next thing we identified on the life of the road are two very important treatments, and they're called crack sealing treatments. They're very cost effective, but what we basically do here is we have some longitudinal and transverse cracks. What we want to do is route those out, seal them up so that we don't have water penetrating the pavement. Water is death for pavement. We all saw what happened this winter with freeze-thaw. So if you can keep those cracks sealed up, you're going to maintain that pavement in a better condition for a longer time. So as we deteriorate further, we come to a point in the life of the road where we have an opportunity to resurface the road. And resurfacing involves removal of the top layer of asphalt and replacing it. Again, you can see here, this road looks similar to the other one, but the cracks are much wider now. So we can't crack seal this anymore. It's better for us to go in, mill off the top 40 or 50 millimeters, and replace it with a nice new wearing surface. You can see that we have a very narrow window of opportunity here. It's only about 5 years. So if we don't get to that for budget constraints or prioritization, we come to a minor reconstruction, at which point we're going to remove all of the asphalt, both asphalt layers. And you can see here this road, it has some different distresses. You can see this alligator cracking or spider cracking. That's an indication that the underlying asphalt is starting to deteriorate. So we need to go down a little bit deeper here. You can see the curb and sidewalk is actually in pretty good shape, so we can keep that as is. And finally, if we still cannot do the minor reconstructions, the road gets a lot older, the underground assets are aging, we need to do a full reconstruction. That's where we're going to pull everything up and replace it all. And this is another example here. You can see the pavement's badly oxidized, curb face sidewalk has seen better days. The storm sewers underneath here are in poor condition, so we need to take care of those right now. Now what I like about this graph here is quickly you can look at the economics of things. So if the green treatment represents X amount of dollars, the yellow treatment represents 3 times that cost. So you can see if we do a treatment here and let it deteriorate and do another one, we've spent 2X and we're out past 70 years before we have to reconstruct that road. Whereas if we wait and we go to the 3X treatment, we're barely getting 60 years before we should be reconstructing that road. So doing the right thing at the right time is going to give you the longest life cycle at the lowest cost. So, as I said before, we needed to code all of that into Reva, and this is one of the screens where we do that. We've created these different rehabilitation types. You can see that I have 2 different minor reconstructions here, one with full curb, one with spot curb. The system looks at the curb condition to determine which way it goes. I also have 2 resurfacing treatments, 50 millimeter and a 40 millimeter. That's dependent on the age. If we can catch it before those cracks propagate way down, we can get away with a 40 millimeter treatment. And again, the 2 crack sealing. This is the logic here that triggers these events. It looks kind of nasty, but it's fairly straightforward. When we have the PQI is equal to the minor reconstruction trigger PQI. What we did is on a single screen, we set up all of these trigger PQIs that basically define what those boxes are. So on one screen, we can start pulling all of these levers, recalculating the system, and see what it does in terms of condition and cost going forward. And then we have the event name, which is something descriptive that we can put onto reports that we can output from the system. So the costing for these treatments was very, very important. So we used 2 different methods here. We used RS means, which is a standardized costing index specific to Hamilton, Ontario. So I can build my treatments using RS means, and they have unique identifiers, so I can easily search those items year after year and update those cost estimates very quickly. So it's a very repeatable process. The other method we use is the Reva settlement module, which is another piece of software we developed with Reva. And that allows us to allocate our project costs to individual assets. So we know how much we spent on storm sewers in a given project. We know how much we spent on the pavement, the wearing surface, and the base layer. So we're kind of getting the real world costs there. So we used the 2 costs together to give us a kind of a baseline. We added factors for design, for inspection, for administrative work. Again, we configured all of this in one place so that you can pull those levers or quickly update your costs, and it'll be reflected throughout the system. We've also inflated our costs at 1% a year. So this here is an effect screen for what that treatment does. You can see it resets the condition, resets these age counters. This is the cost expression here. Again, it looks pretty nasty. The first part here is for the inflation, and the second part here is the costing. This is the major cost trigger switch, or I guess you could call it. So now that all of that's in Reva, the engine goes to work and starts calculating all of this. So what we end up with here is this detailed screen here. This is for a road that we rehabilitated a couple of years ago. I like showing it because it kind of gives you the full life cycle. So this is the information we have now for this piece of pavement. We know when we need to do the treatment. We have the event date. We know what type of work we need to be doing. Again, the event name is specific for the reports, and we know the cost for all of those treatments. So we have costing here and rehabilitation events for 60 years for this single piece of pavement. We track 1,900 pieces of pavement in the city. We have this type of information. We have 160 bridge structures in the city. We have this information. All of our storm sewer segments, maintenance holes. It goes on and on. We have this type of information, so very, very powerful. The problem arises that if you resurface the road this year, and 2 years later you have to dig it up to put in your new sewers, that doesn't make any sense. So we implemented these synergies feature. What we had to do is create polygons in GIS that the system uses to search for other assets. So it says, okay, if I'm doing the road work in 2014, what other assets are in that right-of-way that need work done as well? And so we can align those costs. So when you see the costs later on, you can be assured that we're not going to be ripping up the road 2 years after we put it down. So now that we have all this information in Reva, it generates over 300,000 events. So we have a bit of a big data problem. We need to visualize that better. So we got some dashboarding software to help us do that. So this is the, what do we own and where is it? You can see this is just a basic graph here showing the breakdown of our roads in the different classes. And you can see the PQIs associated with each class here. This is the Reva breakdown. Remember I said we did 13 life cycles, right? So it's far more descriptive. You can see arterial rural, arterial urban. The rural number is really driving down that average, right? So we can start looking at the data this way. This is a very simple graph showing replacement value of our different road pavement segments we have. Arterial with curb, collector with curb, and local with curb constitute the majority of our value. Okay, condition. This is when things get really interesting. So this is a condition distribution chart for the entire city. So across the bottom we have PQI ranges. So 90 to 100 would be excellent. Down in the 20s again would be very poor. The vertical axis we have lane length. So you can see we have 457 lane kilometers of roadways that are in this very good portion here. Because the system is built on a hierarchy, we can start slice and dice this data however we want. So we can see the different components here. Top right-hand corner, we have arterial roads. Bottom left, we have collector. Bottom right, we have local. So you can see that of this 457, not much is coming from arterials. Not much is coming from collectors. The majority of it is coming from the local roads. And that makes sense. We've been spending a lot of money on our local roads recently. But we know that we probably should be spending more on our arterials going forward. So what do we need to do? This is a basic tabular layout here. We have the pavement segment. We have the year. This is for 2013. We have these different treatments we need to do and the cost associated with them. That's fantastic. But let's sum it up by year going forward. And this is what we end up with. So if we take a closer look here, you can see we have this big spike in 2013. This represents our backlog. This is stuff that we need to do, but we don't have money to do it right now. And you can see that our needs start to ramp up until about 2030 where we have a big spike. Again, because we're built on the hierarchy, we can start analyzing, well, what's that made up of here? We can see, again, not much in arterial, a little bit in collector, but our local roads are really driving that. We're gonna have to rebuild a lot of those. So how much money do we need is always the magic question. In the past, we've used the 2% rule, which basically says figure out what all of your assets are worth and reinvest 2% and hope you have enough money at the end of the day. Our council was very, very happy when we said we're going to retire this graph because we've got better data now. So this was basically the culmination of all the work that we did here, is this need versus funding graph. And so we'll look at this in a little bit more detail here. So again, the green bar represents your needs. The blue bar represents the amount of money we're spending on our needs. And the red is the cumulative balance going forward. If we don't do it in year one, we don't do it in year two, it's still a backlog item, right? So that's the cumulative balance. The good news first is that we're actually maintaining this infrastructure gap for about the next 20 years. So we've dubbed this the rehabilitation phase in the city. We can still fix what we have. We can renew what we have going forward. However, we know the slide is coming. We know approximately when it's going to happen and approximately how much money we're going to need. We've dubbed this the rebuilding phase. It coincides with the end of the useful life for a lot of the assets that were built in the 50s and 60s. So we cannot maintain them or renew them anymore. We have to rebuild them. So we're going to have to rebuild the city of Burlington going forward. So again, this graph was very, very powerful to our council, and really provided the foundation for the financial analysis and plan that came afterwards. So in terms of next steps, as I said, this is a corporate system. So our other departments, now seeing what we've done in the linear category or the roadway category, they want the same kind of outputs and same capabilities. So the expertise that I've developed over the last few years is now being drawn upon by these different departments to configure Reva to do what they want it to. So Parks and Open Space is doing a large data collection right now, and that'll be ready to go by this year's budget cycle. We've also started looking at this question about separating our capital budget into renewal money that's prescribed by the plan and new and enhancement. That's where you can start prioritizing a hockey arena or something like that, those new projects. We should be taking care of what we already have. Our finance team came up with a long-term plan to eliminate the gap in 20 years, and our council has approved that. So the tax increases are fairly minor, but if we start now, they'll compound to a significant amount of money. So we'll have that money in place to do the work that we need to do. We need to do some public engagement work as well to educate the public on what we've done right now and what the current status is. And we have to produce the actual asset management plan that the province will require for funding. So just to wrap up here, summary, in terms of innovation, we feel we've been really innovative in connecting all of our source systems together, allowing the subject matter experts to do their work and have that roll up to a corporate reporting. In terms of value, we have a great understanding of this infrastructure gap, which we never had before. So again, we can be more strategic with our planning. Achieve success. Again, like I said, this was the foundation for the financial plan that we've passed, and I really feel that that's the responsible thing to do. If we can do something about it now, we should. We shouldn't push it off to the next generation. So I was very pleased that our council felt the same way. And application of technology, the integration of the source asset management systems and this dashboarding software that allows you to gain insight on your information has been a big plus for us. And every good project has a good team behind it. I can't do my work without these people doing their work, so I always like to show this at the end, and that's all I have right now. So, thank you.